Hey guys, and today I'm going to do my tips for round 16. First game we have up is Collingwood and Adelaide at the MCG. Last time these sides went up against each other, it was Collingwood winning at AAMI Stadium by 26 points. And last week, Collingwood were absolutely exceptional against Carlton. They were down by 4 or 5 goals, and they just found a way to overcome the Blues and beat them by 41 in the end. Adelaide were a bit stiff, going down by a goal to West Coast at home last week as well. It's been a long time since Adelaide actually managed to get a win against Collingwood, and that came all the way back in round 1 2009, which was Taylor Walker's debut. And interestingly enough, the last 3 games have been decided under a kick when it's been at the MCG, so that's quite astounding. Collingwood will be pretty rapt with their win last week, but it certainly won't be a give-me game. And Adelaide also play their worst football at the MCG, so it's going to be tough for them. But I'm going to tip the Pies to win by 23 points. Hawthorn go to AAMI Stadium to take on a resurgent Port Adelaide side on the Saturday afternoon. The last time these sides went up against each other, it was Hawthorn giving Port a 72-point hiding. Last week, the Kennet's curse still lives on for the Hawks. They went down to the Cats just by 10 points. And Port Adelaide were pretty gutsy, but fell away the last few minutes against the Bombers to lose by 30 points. In recent weeks, Port have shown they've been able to beat Collingwood and Sydney at home, so they're certainly not without a chance, but it will be very tough. Hawthorn will be very keen to make amends, so he's keen as GWS to get a win on the board. I can see it being pretty close, and I don't think there'll be a whole lot in this game. I'm going to tip the Hawks to win this game by 17 points. Geelong hosts Melbourne at Simmons Stadium on the Saturday afternoon. Last week, Geelong had a pretty sneaky win against the Hawks and continued on the Kennet's curse. And Melbourne, they were pretty good against the Swans, but they went down by 31 points in the end. The last game between these sides was Geelong winning by 43 points in what was an unconvincing win at the time. Unfortunately, you can't really see Melbourne winning this game, especially since the last time they defeated Geelong was all the way back in 2005. So certainly been a long time between drinks. I think with Geelong's extraordinary record at home and their ability to score quite well, and opposing to the Demons' ability to score, you just have to be nuts to not tip Geelong. I'm going to go with Geelong by 50 points. Richmond head over to Cairns to take on the Gold Coast at Kazali Stadium on the Saturday afternoon, or late Saturday afternoon. Richmond was so disappointing last week against North Melbourne. They lost by over 10 goals, and Gold Coast weren't really that great. Didn't have Gary Ablett, and it wasn't as severe though. They only lost by 33 points. The last time these sides went up against each other, it was Gold Coast winning after the siren with Carmichael Hunt, and they got a 2-point victory. And it's a big week for the Tigers, because they're the only team that hasn't beaten Gold Coast in the competition, so it's time to really knuckle down, and they really need this on the board. Really tough game to pick this one, because you'd expect Richmond to win, especially from their poor performance last week, but Gold Coast will always give you an honest contest. I think Gold Coast might be able to cause another upset with the Tigers. Seems to be their bogey game, it's been called. And I think Gary Ablett will also be back in the side this week, so look out Tigers fans. I'm not confident the Gold Coast Suns can win, but I don't know, I just thought I'd chuck an upset in there. I'm going to go with Gold Coast by 5 points. Carlton and St Kilda are battling it out at Etihad Stadium with what you'd think is the Blues' last chance to make a ping at staying in the finals race. Last week, Carlton were absolutely fantastic for 3 quarters of the first quarter. But once Jared Waite went off, they were shocking after that, and they lost by 41 points in the end. Collingwood were terrific, it has to be said though. On the other hand, the Saints were really impressive without a few stars and going over with a pretty young side, but they just couldn't keep up with Fremantle on the final term and lost by 5 goals in the end. The last time these sides went up against each other, it was St Kilda causing a major upset by 9 points. This is quite a staggering statistic, really. St Kilda have won the last 4 games against Carlton and 16 of the last 18 overall. They just have an exceptional record over Carlton over the last 10 years. And I reckon the Saints are a fair chance to win this one. It's a flip of the coin, but they just have such a great record against them, and Carlton aren't really going that well at the moment either. So I have to go with St Kilda by 3 points. Brisbane host North Melbourne at the Gabba on the Saturday night. Last week, Brisbane had a pretty handy 33-point win over the Suns, and North Melbourne were absolutely fantastic against the Tigers, getting a 62-point victory. And early on in the year, when these sides went up against each other, it was North Melbourne at Etihad Stadium getting the job done by 63 points. North Melbourne have won the last 3 clashes against Brisbane, but haven't beaten them at the Gabba since 2005, so it hasn't been a happy hunting ground for them, has to be said, which gives the Lions a great advantage. It's probably another 50-50 game, but if Brisbane can beat Geelong at the Gabba, well, I don't see why they can't beat North Melbourne there. It's going to be a tough game, but I'm going to go with Brisbane by 7 points. Sydney faced crosstown rivals GWS at the SCG. Last week, Sydney were okay, didn't play terrific, but they got the 31-point victory in the end over Melbourne. And GWS was so close to getting their first win of the year. They went down by 4 points to the Western Bulldogs. Last time these sides went up against each other was Sydney by 30 points. I don't think anyone can see Sydney losing this one. I'm going to go with the Swans by 57 points. Essendon and the Western Bulldogs fight it out at Etihad Stadium on the Sunday. Last week, Essendon recorded a gutsy 30-point victory over Port, and the Western Bulldogs got a win against GWS at last, and that was only by 4 points, but they did enough. And the last time these sides went up against each other, it was Essendon recording a nice 84-point victory. Essendon have won the last 3, so the last time the Bulldogs beat the Bombers, it was all the way back in 2010. So Essendon have 11 wins as opposed to the Bulldogs 4, so it just shows they're a class above them, and they shouldn't have too many issues here. I'm going to tip the Bombers by 47 points. Fremantle and West Coast face each other for Derby 38 with what will be a huge game, as it so often is. Last week, Fremantle got a nice 30-point victory over the Saints, just getting on top of them in the final quarter. And West Coast were very, very lucky in the end. Josh Kennedy kicking the winning goal at AAMI Stadium to get a great victory against Adelaide. The last time these sides went up against each other was round 1 this year, with Fremantle coming out on top by 28 points. I found this stat quite amazing. Since the start of 2006, Fremantle have won 11 of the last 15 derbies, and they've won the last 2 at the moment, so they've certainly dominated in recent years. And I don't think ladder position and form seem to count with these two sides. It just generally boils down to who wants the derby the most, or who wants those bragging rights. But what's amazing about Fremantle is just most sides just can't seem to get more than 11 goals against them, so scoring's never really easy. I think the Dockers might be the better side here, but you can't really count the Eagles out despite their poor form at home this year. I'm going to tip the Dockers by 13 points. So those are my tips for round 16. Well, it's going to be a tough Saturday this week. Whether you tip the upsets or not, it's going to be very, very tough to get a 9 this week. Anyways, feel free to comment your tips, like the video if you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you guys all soon.